At 3:17 a.m., the phone beside my bed inside the White House started ringing. Not vibrating, not buzzing, ringing. And when that phone rings at 3:17 a.m., it's never good news. I had been President of the United States for just 94 days, and in the next 5 minutes, I would make a decision that could either prevent a war, or start one. That was the moment I realized something no campaign speech ever tells you. The most powerful job in the world is also the loneliest. And this is the story of what that really feels like. To be a USA president. January 20th. The wind cut through Washington like history itself. I stood on the steps of the United States Capitol, staring at a sea of faces stretching beyond what my eyes could measure. Millions watching in person, hundreds of millions watching across the world. My hand rested on the same Bible once used by Abraham Lincoln. The Chief Justice said the words, "I do solemnly swear," and in that moment, my life stopped belonging to me. It belonged to 330 million people. When I finished the oath and said, "So help me God," I wasn't thinking about power. I was thinking about pressure. 3 months into the presidency, I learned something no campaign speech prepares you for. At 3:17 a.m., the red phone rang. There is something deeply unsettling about a phone ringing in the White House in the middle of the night. It doesn't ring for small things. I picked it up. "Mr. President," the voice said, "we have a situation. A hostile nation had launched a missile test over international waters. Our allies were nervous. Intelligence agencies were scrambling. Within minutes I was in the Situation Room beneath the White House. Screens glowed. Maps lit up. Generals spoke in precise, controlled tones. I remember looking around and realizing something terrifying. Everyone in that room could advise me. Only I could decide. That's the loneliest seat in the world. People think the presidency is about speeches. It's not. It's about choices. And every choice costs someone something. When we authorized a defensive naval deployment, markets reacted. Diplomats called. Critics shouted. But when the crisis de-escalated without a single casualty, I understood something profound. Restraint is sometimes more powerful than retaliation. That lesson was once understood deeply by leaders like John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. History doesn't just sit in books. It breathes through your decisions. One quiet evening, I walked alone through the White House halls. Portraits of former presidents stared back at me. George Washington, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Barack Obama. Different eras, different crises, but the same chair. I touched the resolute desk. So many hands had rested there during war, depression, civil rights movements, pandemics. And now mine did too. You don't feel powerful in that room. You feel temporary. Halfway through my first year, the economy faltered. Supply chains froze. Inflation spiked. Small businesses suffered. I traveled to factories in Detroit, farms in Iowa, and tech hubs in Austin. What I learned wasn't in briefing books. It was in people's eyes. A father who feared layoffs. A single mother juggling 2 jobs. A young entrepreneur on the edge of bankruptcy. Policy is numbers on paper. Leadership is faces you can't forget. We pushed through a bipartisan economic recovery bill after weeks of tense negotiation in Congress. It wasn't perfect. No bill ever is. But when job numbers began climbing again months later, I didn't celebrate. I exhaled. One afternoon, intelligence confirmed a cyberattack targeting U.S. infrastructure. Hospitals, airports, energy grids. Modern warfare doesn't always look like explosions. Sometimes it looks like blinking cursors. We worked with agencies and private tech leaders to isolate and neutralize the threat. It was a battle fought in silence. No parades, no headlines about heroism, but that night, millions of Americans slept without knowing how close the system came to collapse. And that's the strange thing about the presidency. If you succeed, most people never know how bad it could have been. In my second year, I visited U.S. service members stationed overseas. When you stand in front of soldiers thousands of miles from home, you realize something deeply humbling. They carry out your decisions. A young Marine shook my hand and said, "We've got your back, Mr. President." I almost said, "No, I've got yours," because sending Americans into danger is the heaviest responsibility of all. Every commander-in-chief learns that. Some carry it forever. During my third year, the country was deeply divided. Politics had become a battlefield. Approval ratings fluctuated. Protests filled streets. Cable news turned every sentence into war. So I did something risky. I addressed the nation from the Oval Office and spoke not as a politician, but as a citizen. I talked about unity, about shared values, About remembering that disagreement isn't disloyalty. The speech wasn't dramatic, it was honest, and sometimes honesty is revolutionary. What people never see is what the job takes from you. Birthdays missed, family dinners interrupted, moments that can't be reclaimed. Security follows you everywhere, privacy disappears, even a quiet walk becomes an operation. My family sacrificed as much as I did. The presidency isn't one person's burden. It's an entire household's. In my final year, I faced the hardest decision of my presidency. An international ally requested military support in a regional conflict. Backing them risked escalation, refusing them risked alliance fracture. I spent nights studying reports, consulting diplomats, listening to military leaders, and then I made a decision that disappointed some and relieved others. That's when I understood, there is no right decision that pleases everyone. There is only the decision you can live with. Re-election night was tense. States turned red, then blue, then red again. Democracy is loud, messy, imperfect. But when the final results were certified, regardless of outcome, I felt pride. Not in winning or losing, but in the peaceful transfer of power, a tradition that began in 1797 when John Adams succeeded George Washington. That tradition is stronger than any single leader. On my last day in office, I walked once more through the West Wing. The Oval Office was quiet. The desk was cleared. The weight I carried for years felt strangely lighter, and heavier at the same time. I paused before leaving and looked at the presidential seal on the carpet. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That phrase isn't about perfection. It's about perseverance. Being president taught me 5 truths. Power is temporary. Character is permanent. Unity is fragile. Leadership is lonely. Democracy is worth defending, every single day. When Marine One lifted off from the White House lawn for the last time, I didn't feel like the most powerful person in the world. I felt like a steward, a caretaker of something far bigger than myself. And as the Capitol faded in the distance, I understood something simple. The presidency isn't about being remembered. It's about protecting a system where the people always have the final word.